Hey there, Fourth States. This is Luke Taylor, and welcome to another edition of the KNEO Community Connection, and a really special edition today because we have a couple of guests here in studio with us, and they have some very important information for all of you here in Newton County who have property. If you pay property taxes, you want to be listening up today. So we're joined today with our local state senator, Jill Carter. She's the senator for the 32nd District here in Missouri. And then we're also joined by Cheryl Perkins, our Newton County assessor. And you may have seen things in the news about property taxes and how much they might go up. And just to set the record straight and give us the full story, these two ladies today are going to help us out. And so Senator Carter and Cheryl Perkins, thanks for being with us.
No, this is just a privilege. Thank you, Luke, for taking time and letting us be able to have this opportunity.
I really appreciate you coming out. And so I don't know who wants to begin, but what do you think that the local public needs to know about what's going on right now with our property taxes?
So I'll just begin a little bit with what I've seen at the legislative level there in Jefferson City in the state, and then maybe Cheryl and I can just kind of have a conversation about what's been going on as a follow-up.
Sure.
So, the State Tax Commission, a lot of the stuff that's been going on dealing with property tax has been stemmed from some decisions that have been made through an unelected bureaucratic board called the State Tax Commission. So it's a board of three, essentially appointed positions that really kind of work in tandem with our assessors to make recommendations to them on setting rates, and Cheryl can talk a little bit about that. But what ended up happening was, through good relationships with our assessors in the district, and Cheryl in particular, I found out about what the State Tax Commission was doing to her, where they were leveraging and putting pressure on her to raise the values of the personal property tax. Here you have, in my point of view, you have an elected position, your assessor, who's elected by you, this community, to evaluate and assess property. But she only has so much flexibility to work within that framework, because the State Tax Commission can change policy, adopt different policy, and then put pressure on them to do things that they don't necessarily feel like is representative of the community that she lives in. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think that that's a lot of what she's been feeling.
Yeah.
So in just communicating with her, I became aware of that. Other senators also became aware of what was going on with the State Tax Commission. Some of the stuff that's been going on in Jackson County is even more egregious than that, and I won't get too much into that. But we were out of session when really this started to continue to fire up. And so when we went into special session initially, we had one special session not too long after we ended session in May. The governor called a special session for the stadiums. And so we asked and petitioned the governor to extend that call, because during special session, you can only address what the governor basically says that special session is for, which was this stadium. So unless it took him extending that call to be able to talk about property tax. Mm-hmm. So he did on a Wednesday extend that call to deal with the property tax issue. What we ended up doing was just piecemealing a piece of legislation that, in all transparency, the way that I see it, it will continue to have to be addressed. It was something that was passed at 3:00 in the morning. The bill dropped at 10 o'clock that night. It was a Hail Mary to try to get something passed with all of the other stuff that we were trying to deal with. And we had a limited amount of time to deal with it. So the legislation passed. We were able to bring it to the floor. It did pass at 3:00 in the morning. It was by no stretch of the imagination a perfect piece of legislation. Again, the two objectives, and I think we were successful in doing this, was it drove the conversation. It brought the governor in. It drove the conversation in the Senate and in the House, because then they had to take it up. And then secondly, it put the State Tax Commission on notice. We will be doing more work in this area. So with that, I'll just punt it back to Cheryl and let her talk about what the State Tax Commission has been doing.
Okay.
So after the stadium, recall that everybody went in session for that, the House of Representatives got on board following the assessors and getting information from us. And I talked with Representative Dirk Deaton multiple times. Through all of that, with the representatives now getting on board with the senators, all on our side of the taxpayers, they set up a interim meeting, a group that was like 20 to 25 people.
Yeah, and this is after the legislation passed.
Yeah. And they went and they did a bunch of town halls, and the State Tax Commission was there, and they got the idea of what this is doing to the people and how this affects them. And Newton County, I got a request to do a 12% increase, which I refused. Some of the other counties got 14, 15% increases. That's pretty hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
just from one year to the next, to go up that high.
Yeah. And so with getting the senators and representatives on board, we now have some backing and some help, because the State Tax Commission has already told us that they will be back at us in 26 and 27. So 26 is a new construction year. So that's the year that we have to prepare all of our values for reassessment in 27. So they're going to be on us hard when we do our maintenance agreements at the end of the year on following suit and getting those values up. Mm-hmm. So we've got to keep working with our senators and our representatives to come up with a good plan that's feasible.
So something that might be interesting, I just want to give Cheryle some kudos, because, when this legislation hit the Senate floor, or prior to that, there really wasn't an opportunity for us to read it. There was some debate about whether we do a tax freeze or a tax cap. I had our assessor on the phone. I had, the schools. I had our county commissioner. We were trying to all work out what would be in the best interest of both Jasper and Newton County, the district that I represent. And I'm just going to say that without those kinds of relationships, you're basically left to flounder. So it is just...
You take all the heat for yourself.
Well, and it's a humbling thought to think that as a senator, I could potentially do something to my two counties, that would negatively impact them, just because of my lack of not knowing, what would be the best interest. And that happens all the time. I mean, you get up there and you have to make a quick second decision. And so I was on the phone at 10:30 at night with our county commissioners. Cheryle had been on the phone with me multiple times earlier that day, where other senators were coming into my office when we were debating what the best thing to do would be. And I had our schools and our assessor educating other senators in my office. So just that's how phenomenal our district is, to have 7 or 8 senators sitting around in my office listening to our district talk about what the right thing to do would be and how we apply the proper pressure where it needs to go. Like I said, to me, as the senator, means everything to me. And they're making a difference. So anyway, I just wanted to give her that kudos.
This is one dilemma that's came up, that the senators and the representatives are coming to the office holders and saying, teach me how to do this. I don't know how many times I have talked to other senators that they just call and, well, what about this? How do you do this? And the learning process is great. They're not just saying, yeah, well, we'll fix it. Don't worry about it. They're learning the scenario of what their consequences would be if they do it this way or that way.
Well, and you're talking about local government. I mean, most of your property taxes funds local government. And though people don't like taxes, and this is taboo to say, the reality or the truth of the fact is, it impacts the fire districts, our ambulance districts, it impacts our schools, it impacts our local community, our libraries, So the choice that I personally had was, do I do a freeze or a cap to put the State Tax Commission on notice till we can really get good legislation passed? So we chose to do a tax cap, simply because we're mostly a rural area. We don't have a lot of sales tax base for a lot of our communities. And the freeze would negatively impact, at this point with the legislation the way that it is, would negatively impact our schools. It would end up having them be in the negative.
Okay.
So it cost them, it's not just a freeze for them, it would cost them more than just a freeze.
Okay.
So because of other statutes and the funding and everything, and I don't want to necessarily get into all of that. But what we decided collectively was just to put a cap for now. There's 114 counties in the state. And I think it was 22 of them that decided to do a freeze. And that was because, and a lot of those areas are rural areas that some senators have the bulk of those geographical areas. But the goal was, again, to try to get the State Tax Commission on notice, and then to give us some time to try to push something else through that really was meaningful. But it was a Hail Mary to say, you're not going to do this. When Cheryle talks in regards to the, 15%, 12 to 15%, that's just for this 2-year cycle. Right, Cheryle?
Right.
And so they're going to come back. What they want us, were we in the 68, was it 66, 68, upper 60s range?
I'm in the upper 70s.
Okay.
Actually, I read my report today with the State Tax Commission. I'm in the 80s now.
Okay. But prior to this, we were
in the high 70s, yeah.
Yeah. And so I get you and Jasper County a little bit mixed up.
Yeah.
But
in the high 70s or 80s of what?
Of percentage, basically.
The ratio percentage that the state says we have to be at 90 to 110. I was about 77. I think Jasper was in the 60s, I think.
Yeah.
So what that means is the state is asking you to charge a lot more for property taxes than what you are currently at.
Well, and it's not going to stop, right? Because the pressure from the State Tax Commission was to do the 12 to 15% this 2-year cycle. But then when she comes back to reevaluate, they want her, she said the low 70s, they want her to get to the 90 range, 90 to 110% range.
Got it.
So this is going to continue to happen unless we do something. So that's where we're like, okay, this isn't a one and done. This is going to be an ongoing conversation, and the State Tax Commission we need to reel them in. They shouldn't be applying pressure. Here's the other thing the State Tax Commission has been doing is they've threatened the counties and the assessors that aren't raising to the threshold that they want them to. The State Tax Commission is saying we're going to withhold state sales tax. So that further, now you're talking about that impacting our local police officers, the rest of government, local government. So they're being very punitive and not just coming after our assessors now, but saying to the counties, if you don't basically, because we've supported Cheryle in her doing this, that's putting pressure now on our local elected officials to potentially have her out there on a flagpole by herself because the State Tax Commission is threatening to withhold state sales tax.
Yeah. And this is not the first year you've been having this fight. I mean, they've been trying to push you for years to raise the rates a lot more.
It's always been a recommendation before, never a push like they've done this year.
It's a bigger push this year.
Us, yeah. 80 assessors got letters that you need to either do this or we're going to, remove you from office and we're going to withhold your reimbursement and all this. And I'm like,
impact her budget, essentially threaten her budget. And luckily she's been standing in the gap. And so, our job as a community and other elected officials is to kind of have her back and make sure that the state, this unelected bureaucratic board isn't negatively impacting our locally elected officials. I mean, it's egregious what the State Tax Commission has been doing,
Yeah. Well, and so what could the community do to just kind of stand behind you in this and just let you know that we support you and appreciate that you're trying to keep those rates down for us?
Just whatever you can think of and whatever you can do to help the House of Representatives and the senators and get information to the governor, as to what our situation is. The State Tax Commission is in Jeff City. They don't know our county. You've got to let them know what kind of situation we're in and try to help us come up with a solution and stick with the elected officials to find a solution. We can't just sit back and say, well, just let me know. This year, we've actually had people come forward and help. So we just got to keep going with it.
Okay. And you said there's a cap right now. What's the next step, I guess, or what are we waiting for to find out, I guess, where this is going?
So if the legislation stays as it is, then in April you'll vote on a cap. It has to be done through a vote of the people.
It has to be a vote. Okay.
So here's the other part of the legislation. When the legislation hit that whether to freeze or cap, I had no opportunity to read the bill. I mean, no, they were writing us into the language of the bill as a freeze or a cap. When I went to the senator, and again, he was working, so there's no fault on the senator. I commend him for his efforts. We were all working together trying to do the best thing. But because of the time constraints, and again, we just only had the tools that we had in our, to work through this. But I had gone to him and said, can I read the language? There was no opportunity to read the language because they were drafting the language when I asked. And they were putting our counties in as either a freeze or a cap without the ability to read the language. And so when I asked, I said, okay, is there bonding capacity So that means if there's ever if we grew in Newton County to where we wanted a new library, ambulance district, or the schools wanted to do, some kind of new building or a new school or whatever, that's how we do that on the local level. Well, when I asked, is there a bonding capacity in the legislation? They didn't know because nobody had seen it yet. Mm. So that's why that's why we decided with the commissioners and other elected officials, we decided to do a cap. Just because we knew that we could always add, do, or freeze, but we wanted to make sure there was a potential for growth for our counties.
Okay.
And I didn't have that assurance. And the legislation, like I said, out of 114 counties, only a handful of them decided to go with freeze simply because of the same issue. Mm-hmm. It's not because they don't care. We're going to continue to have to work on that. There is discrepancies between the freezes and the caps now because it's not standardized.
Okay.
So the language of the legislation will have to be addressed. It's being challenged because of that. Mm-hmm. So in the future, what we're seeing, to answer your question, is these interim committees are being held in the House, and even the Senate is having some of their own meetings, and then they're collectively collaborating on how to deal with the issue. So this will be a big issue next legislative session to try to standardize things and hopefully bring some relief to our counties and to our assessors.
Sure. Well, thank you for taking the next steps then and trying to help us out with that. And yeah, I understand what you're saying. Taxes are important. We need taxes to pay for all the things that we appreciate about our county, but we appreciate also that you guys are trying to keep it from being too overbearing on the citizens here. So we've been speaking today with Jill Carter, 32nd District State Senator, as well as Cheryl Perkins, the Newton County Assessor. And thank you for both of you ladies for coming into the studios today and letting all of our listeners know about what's going on and how we can stand with you.
Appreciate it.